Hi, this is Alan Gassman, and I am here with my friends, Marty Shinkman and Jonathan Blotmacher. In 1997, I had lunch with the foundation manager for All Children's Hospital in St. Petersburg, Florida, and we talked about setting up a conference, a seminar. And we set up a one-day seminar in February of 1998, all local speakers and about 75 attendees. So we were really happy with that. The next year we had a national speaker and about 125 attendees. This is a beautiful, beautiful children's hospital with a beautiful, almost 100-year story that has never turned a child away based upon financial need. Since those early years of starting the program, fast forward to 2021, the hospital has merged with Johns Hopkins. It is now Johns Hopkins Children's Hospital. Every child at this beautiful hospital gets their own room and beautiful and wonderful care. So now my granddaughter can go to that hospital and have a medical procedure, which she recently did. And that's why we're here. We're here to support the All Children's Johns Hopkins annual conference. You support us by coming to this conference and by sharing information about All Children's and what you've learned with your clients. We support you by giving you the very best professional education experience possible in the United States. And with the assistance of Jerry Hesh and a lot of other hardworking people, Lydia Bailey, and the speakers this year, I feel very confident that we have done that.
This is the information on the conference for anyone looking to attend. You can Google it. It'll all come right up so you can register, and it's going to be virtual. The speakers are outstanding. They got really brilliant speakers on this year's program, and as you'll see in a minute, the topics that each of these really well-known, well-respected national speakers is covering is really interesting. Just preparing for this, I was fascinated by the coverage and the topics that people are going to talk about. Really, really important cutting-edge information.
Zaritsky, Sarah Clares, Blue Shoes, Tracy Berry, Carlin, Marty Shinkman.
Our first presentation is going to be by Howard Zaritsky. And Howard is going to go into significant detail of what we know now about the Secures Act, about the CARES Act, and I am sure he will also be covering recent case law and what we can expect to happen under the Biden administration. By February, we'll have a pretty good idea of what changes are getting support in Congress so that we can begin thinking about what we can advise our clients to do and to not do. And Jonathan, what comes to mind with respect to what law changes might occur that would occasion action being taken for a client?
I will say, Alan, you have put together a stellar group of people. I'm going to tell you, it's going to be a wonderful learning experience, and people are now going to be able to do better jobs for their clients. And if you thought 2020 was busy, Katie barred the door. I think 2021 is even going to be more so, especially because we're not only going to be looking at potential estate and gift tax changes, but you're also going to be looking at extremely important income tax changes. And I think I think Howard will cover those. I anticipate that he will be talking about the Moore case, which has aggravated the problems that were produced by the 1997 tax court decision in the state of Powell. He will also, I think, mention the new Nelson case, which basically says if you want to use a formula provision, as they did in the Wandry case, you better do it the right way. And Howard, I'm sure, will tell us how to do that.
Howard is such a joy to listen to. His materials are wonderful. You always learn something new, even if you see it 2 days in a row. So Marty, what are your thoughts on electronic wills, and where we're going, and what Sarah Butters is going to be able to provide for us.
Well, COVID has changed the world, and it's not going back. And this topic that Sarah's going to cover is probably one of the most important non-tax topics that any of us can learn about, because it's going to fundamentally change the core of what we do, how we sign wills and other documents. And I think it's only about 4 states that have adopted electronic will statutes. I could see in a year or so that landscape changing dramatically. And, with COVID social distancing, we've jumped through hoops trying to figure out how to get documents signed. There's temporary legislation in different states. And I think, where the future is going to go, she's going to give us some insight. We all need to start rethinking everything we're doing. It's dramatic. It's a great topic. I can't wait to hear what she has to say.
Alan, one other thing on that, because it's going to be a new way of executing wills, and maybe it will extend to other documents. For example, in your state, Alan, if you have a trust that's kind of in the nature of a testamentary transfer, I think you're required to execute it with the formalities of a will. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
So for those of you who do probate type litigation, I think your ship has come home, and this will go through the entire country, and it will be pushed by the legislatures because it is a form of consumerism, which everybody wants.
I'm really looking forward to Attorney Berry's charitable talk. He's going to give us the background of where we are in the Secures Act and the CARES Act. For example, the ability to gift up to 30% of adjusted gross income in appreciated assets to your own private operating foundation, and then to stack another 20% of non-appreciated assets and another 50% of cash. So this is something that people really are going to want to know about. I am hoping that Attorney will also cover the ability to take money out of your IRA, which increases your adjusted gross income, which allows you to put that money into charity. If you're over 59 and a half, you don't have to wait till you're 70 and a half to do this. You can do it right now for as much as you want. Attorney has a lot of other things to cover, always interesting, always humorous, and always very accurate and informative.
Alan, let me mention that I think this will be especially important because of the ability to basically wipe out all of your income through charitable donations, which started last year and continues into this year. And the reason I think it's going to be so important is that there are proposals now that may well be adopted, which are, number one, going to significantly increase individual income tax rates, and number two, for those who have large incomes, their long-term capital gain may be taxed as ordinary income. And as a consequence, if you want to avoid income tax at a 40% and possibly of almost a 44% effective rate of taxation with the net investment income tax on long-term capital gain, charitable giving will be a major component for your clients. And you need to know about it early in the year, which is what Attorney is going to tell us about, so you can plan with your clients as to what they should do before the end of this year.
If we see the estate tax changes that many of us anticipate from a Democratic administration, from the Biden administration, charitable giving is going to be probably one of the hottest topics.
We always ask our clients who are going to leave everything to charity, why don't you give more now so you can get an income tax deduction on your giving? You need to ask those clients every year or every couple of years, because their attitudes can change. And eventually, with a polite nudge and some help from Uncle Sam, you can move those assets into the charitable realm where they will go to very good use. For those of you who don't know who Bruce Stone is, you are in for a big treat. Bruce Stone is a Naples trust and litigation lawyer, one of the smartest people on the planet, and very well respected from a national standpoint. Bruce gives a lot of really good practical information and wonderful strategies, including client communication suggestions on how you deal with the crazy world of American families. Who is your family? Who will your family be? How much do you need to leave to your second spouse, to your third spouse? Will your children adopt people? Will your grandchildren be born 200 years from now? This is all very interesting, but also very pertinent stuff And Bruce sees this both in drafting as a draftsman and in litigation.
Well, I think you said it all, Alan. I was perhaps blessed or damned by having the first case involving the inheritance of a grandchild who was born after his father, who had predeceased his father, had died. And the grandmother, who viewed her baby boy, grandson, born by basically a procedure after her son had died, using his frozen sperm as his replacement. But one of the other children said no, they shouldn't take. And that's a case out of New York called In Re Martin B. There's now legislation in many, many states about when such a posthumously conceived descendant will be considered a descendant. One of the things, and I think Bruce will probably mention this, is you ought to specify in your instruments whether or to what extent, if at all, a posthumously conceived descendant will be considered a descendant. And I have very strong views about that, and the Surrogates Court of New York County agreed with me that this posthumously conceived grandchild would take as any other grandchild would take.
I mean, we all need to be very well prepared for these eventualities. They are upon us.
This topic is growing dramatically. I mean, 20 years ago, it was barely discussed. It's now becoming almost commonplace. So we're all going to be dealing with what Bruce is going to address more and more. So very, very pertinent.
So speaking for the Board of Advisors of the Hospital Foundation Conference, we are very proud to have Carlin Mccaffrey join us for the first time. I have seen her speak and try never to miss any presentation that she gives or any outline that she presents, because she always covers everything that needs to be covered and other things that no one else thought of. She is a rock solid practitioner and writer. So when she says that she's going to tell me how to structure the tax consequences of marriage and divorce so that I can bring value to my clients who are in that process or looking at that process, that is worth the entire price of admission for this conference.
Well, Alan, you're right. There's no one better in the whole world than Carlin. And Carlin's going to discuss things like, if you're planning to do a so-called spousal lifetime access trust, and you think maybe there's a chance, and there's always a chance of a divorce, she's going to tell you what you can do to protect yourself from being tagged with the income of that trust, even after the divorce occurs.
So once you understand Carlin's outline and have clients in the bankruptcy world, you can become active in that bankruptcy for one party or both, depending upon how the conflicts work, to save tax dollars and make the best of an unhappy situation. It's a new part of your practice if you just listen to this talk and read the outline to have a basic understanding so that you can be the impetus to allowing these things to occur, saving a lot of tax dollars for a lot of families. Finally, I don't know who these two guys are, but we had an extra hour to fill. We couldn't find anybody. So we asked Marty and Jonathan, can you give us your very best stuff? Not any one particular topic, but you're going to be paying attention to what happens during the day from Howard's presentation to the end. You're going to bring some things together. You're going to see them in a new light. And what are you most excited about for this presentation? Because let me tell you, we are always excited to have you guys, and especially to have you together.
I mean, we're gonna build on and try not to duplicate or repeat anything that anyone else has talked about, but ideas that we can come up with to elaborate on or build on what other comments have been made, we may do. But I think for the time that we have, unless other speakers cover it, we're going to focus on practical planning for 2021. Jonathan, I think, said earlier in our clip here that 2021 could be just a tidal wave of work for all of us. 2020 was unbelievable in terms of how busy everybody was, and 2021 could prove to be the same thing. There's no question that lots of clients did not take action in 2020. So what do we tell those clients and what do we do for them now? What about the risks and issues of a retroactive tax change? If there is the potential of a retroactive tax change, one of the things that Jonathan developed that he'll go through is a formula allocation for how you can make gifts. So if there's a retroactive tax change and the exemption goes from 11.7, which is what it is today as we speak, down to 3.5, you don't want to risk a taxable gift. What do you do? And we'll walk you through that. And we'll talk about some of the planning ideas that were relevant last year and how to apply them this year. So, for example, one of the questions, spousal lifetime access trust has become a hot item that many people are using. How do you differentiate the trust? One way is by doing them at different points in time, leaving time between them. But can you really differentiate trust to deflect a reciprocal trust doctrine challenge by differentiating them by time if we don't know when new legislation will be proposed? So we're going to talk about some of the other ways to address it and sort of the balance. Do you want to risk deferring one trust to have time between them when you may now run afoul of an effective date of new legislation? So we're going to try to talk about a lot of practical issues people can address now with their clients.
Well, let me just add that we're going to try to tell you how you can avoid the reciprocal trust doctrine when you want both spouses or both spouses want to create a spousal lifetime access trust for each of them, a so-called SLAT. And we have a mechanism on something that I first wrote up with Abby O'Connor of Anchorage, Alaska, and Mitchell Gans of Hofstra Law School and NYU Law School, something called a Special Power of Appointment Trust, or a SPAT, which we do not believe will fall under the reciprocal trust doctrines because one spouse may have big benefits in the trust, but the other spouse seemingly has none. And that's something that you really need to know about because you should have clients who should be doing transfers this year. And as Marty said, we'll also tell you how to unwind it if it turns out that there's retroactive legislation. So the $11 million gift you made will not result in an $8 million taxable gift because they reduced the exemption by about $8 million.
We're going to give some practical thoughts too if somebody did slats last year and starts to reconsider whether the reciprocal trust doctrine could be a problem, how they might be able even to go back and try to improve what they had then.
Very good. And I wanted to mention that interactive legal is a very, very important part of the estate planning community, especially for those of us who use the interactive legal drafting system, which Jonathan oversees. So we get the very best of ideas from Jonathan and Marty and from Interactive Legal as part of this conference. We typically have at least 400 attendees at our main conference and live video sites. This year, especially being for a hospital system, we are, of course, going to make it virtual. You're going to have recordings of everything you see. If you like, you can have an artificial intelligence transcript of each talk. You're going to have wonderful materials, and you're going to be helping a very, very wonderful institution that helps thousands and thousands of children every year. So thank you very much for listening to this, for putting up with us, and hopefully for attending this wonderful conference. Thank you.